So good evening, everybody, and thank you very much for taking the time to attend our webinar. This is in regards to studying an MBA in Ireland, and more specifically here in the Trinity Business School. That's the Trinity MBA here in Dublin, Ireland. I'm joined here with my colleague, Mark Heaney, who heads up the career service for the Trinity MBA. I myself manage the admissions for both our one-year full-time and executive MBA program. I'm effectively your initial point of contact if and when you're pushing ahead with an application or looking for further information on the program itself. So by way of agenda, I'll talk you through the program in some detail, run you through the main structure and the delivery mode of the Trinity MBA program, and what sets us apart from maybe some other MBA programs out there in the market currently. And then I'll pass you over to my colleague Mark here, who will discuss in a bit more detail the careers aspects and the career support services for the Trinity MBA program. Diraj, I might ask you maybe to switch us over to the slide deck, and we will begin the presentation, please.
All set.
Okay, so maybe before I discuss the MBA program, I might just put it in a bit of context with regards to our business school here in Trinity College Dublin. So the Trinity Business School has been in existence for a long time now, since 1925, and we sit within a parent university that is over 450 years old. That is Trinity College Dublin, Ireland's #1 ranked university. But while the university itself is quite an ancient institution and our business school has been in existence for a long time, the current structure of our business school, and in particular the new building itself, is very, very new. We just opened our doors as recently as June of this year. We currently enroll about 2,000 students across undergraduate and postgraduate programs, and the new school, as I said, opened in June of this year with an €80 million investment. So the lecture theatres and the facilities here showcasing the latest technology to deliver the programs. Our flagship business program as part of the business school is obviously the MBA program, and I'll just talk you through that now in a bit of detail. Any questions, feel free to type them into the chat box. So, the Trinity MBA program. The type of program that we offer here in Trinity Business School is very much a project-based MBA model. We looked at different MBA programs that were delivered across the globe, and we basically cherry-picked the aspects from those programs that we thought were most practical and most relevant to the current MBA student market. We deliver very much a broad-based general management MBA program, and we don't offer a huge range of electives. It's not an MBA program with a specialization in finance or marketing. We purposely geared our MBA towards targeting students that are interested in moving into managerial type positions in any sector or in any industry. So to give you an idea of who undertakes the MBA program here in Trinity, this is a snapshot of two cohorts, the full-time class 2019-2020 and the first year of the executive MBA or the part-time class. So our full-time MBA class are quite small, somewhere between 40 to 50 students each year. And this year, as you can see, we just recruited 40 students. Average age about 31 years old, but about 7 or maybe even 8 years of experience. The male-female ratio on the program itself is quite well balanced, 52% male to 48% female, which is quite unique for MBA programs. The majority of MBA programs would be heavily skewed towards male representation in cohorts, somewhere in the region of 70-30. So a huge drive on an ongoing basis would be to ensure the gender balance on the program remains as close to 50-50 as we can possibly get it. We have about 11 nationalities, 11 to 12 nationalities each year. This year we recruited 11 different nationalities onto the program. And we would also have a huge range of sectors and industries represented on the program, some in the region of 16 different sectors and industries on our full-time MBA class this year. So while the class sizes would be quite small, they'd be extremely eclectic and diverse, and this would lend itself to the project-based MBA model that we undertake. The part-time or the executive MBA class would be a much more experienced cohort. The majority of the students would be from Ireland originally, maybe 65 to 70% of the class from Ireland. The other remaining 35 or 40% not from Ireland originally, but obviously living and working here if they're to undertake the program on a part-time basis. The male-female ratio, again, hovering close to 50-50. About 16 different nationalities on the MBA program at the executive level, and 14 different sectors of industries being represented. So we purposely recruit, as I said, from as a diverse range of sectors and industries as we possibly can. And we feel that the greater the diversity within the cohort, then the stronger the program. So we look for candidates from quite different backgrounds and different levels of experience. So even though you might think your current experience to date, both professionally or your achievements, may not be overly relevant in a typical MBA applicant, we currently look at all applications holistically and very much welcome those that will come from quite unique sectors or industries or backgrounds. So moving on to the program structure itself, I mentioned a couple of times we run what's called a project-based MBA model. So to give you an idea of what this actually is, most, if not all, MBAs would have some form of consultancy project or case study analysis as part of their program. This is quite standard for any MBA. So we basically looked at this element of an MBA program and we thought this is where the greatest value add would be for the students. So we made this project element of the MBA the overarching backbone of our particular program. We recruit about 30 to 40 organizations onto the program each year, and they would consist of a range of multinational corporations, SMEs, and NGOs. And we would take a class of somewhere between 40 to 50 students, divide that class up into project teams of about 5 or 6 students per team, and then each team would work on 3 live projects with 3 very different organizations. So each team would work on one project with a multinational, they would work on a second project with an SME, and a third project then with an NGO. And the model is basically designed to give the students as much of an opportunity as we possibly can to learn how to use and to draw down what they've studied in the classroom environment and to apply it under a live project-based setting. So the projects themselves are not an academic exercise. The companies that participate in them are obviously looking for answers, and they're taken very seriously from ourselves here on the Trinity MBA, in that the teams themselves are out there in sectors and industries representing not only our MBA program, but by extension our university here at Trinity College Dublin. The model that we deploy throughout this MBA, this project-based MBA, is basically a 3-term, 1-year full-time program. So each term is effectively 10 weeks, 10 teaching weeks long. So the program will move extremely fast. Towards the first 2 terms of the program, the majority of the in-class learning will be undertaken. So all students will be undertaking 12 taught modules as part of our MBA program. The majority of these modules will be core or compulsory, and you do have a small range of electives to choose from. 3 of the 12 subjects that you will be studying will be in elective-based form. So you will be studying 9 core modules plus 3 electives, comprising your 12 taught modules. In addition to that, then you would have your 3 consultancy projects. The majority of the consultancy project work will be done throughout the latter stages of the program. And then wrapped around the full 1-year program would be your lead module. This would be your leadership and professional development, as well as the careers advisory service. So to delve into the projects in a small bit more detail, as I mentioned earlier, each team within the cohort will be undertaking 3 live projects with 3 very different organizations. The first one there on your screen, you'll see the Social Enterprise Project. This is a short 6-week project where the team are working with an NGO. They have to take the learnings and the models and frameworks that will be covered in the classroom environment and obviously apply them to an organization whose targets will be non-financial. This gives the students a good opportunity to get to grips with the content and to be able to tweak and adapt it to a very different type of organizational structure. The second project would be your SME scaling project, where the teams are working with a small Irish company, maybe 20 to 50 employees, and the company would be able to expand its business into a new marketplace. The MBA team would meet with the management of the company, and they would get briefed on the business that the organisation is involved with, and then they have to research that new marketplace, customer base, its competitor base, and develop out a scaling or a growth strategy for the company and pitch that back to the management at the end of the project itself. And thirdly, then you would undertake a much larger project. It's called a strategic company project, and this time you will be working with a multinational corporation. We're quite fortunate here in Dublin. We do have a large number of multinationals that will base their European headquarters here, large number of tech companies, finance firms, consultancy firms, and our own Irish multinationals also, which would stem from the food industry, farm industry also heavily represented here in Ireland. So the MBA team would undertake a 4-phase management consulting audit with a multinational corporation. They would meet with the senior management of the company in each of the 4 phases of the project. Phase 1 of the project would be an industry analysis. The second phase then, you would be undertaking a company analysis and delving a bit deeper into the organizational structure of the multinational. In the third phase, a project brief is finalised with the executive management team of the company. And the fourth and final phase, the MBA team execute their project brief and derive a management report that is presented back to senior management of the company as well as faculty members here from the business school. And these 3 projects would make up a very large percentage of the students' overall grade on the programme. So they make up a huge part of our MBA programme. Another thing to take note of, I suppose, on our MBA programme are the options for international residency weeks. So the MBA here in Trinity has to be a reflection of the type of economy that it's sitting in, which here in Ireland we've obviously a very small, open, export-orientated economy. So international business and internationalisation are a huge part of the programme in general. This will culminate basically in the options of international residency weeks. We've made it compulsory this year for all students to do at least 1 international residency week. And the 3 options are as follows. And the first trip is the trip to Leuven in Belgium. And this is a 1-week program of study on negotiation skills. And the cost of this particular trip is included in the fees for the MBA program. The other 2 options are an additional cost, and they're a bit more niche in their subject matter. So the trip to the University of Sao Paulo in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil is studying management on a cross-border basis for the emerging market economies, focusing on the LATAM region in particular. And the third option is to the University of Cape Town in South Africa, and that is looking at management with regard to sustainability and stewardship of the environment and the community. So these 3 options are given to students, the first of which is no additional cost, and the second, there is an additional cost to be incurred by the student. We're probably looking at an extra €2,000, plus the students will cover their own flight if they're either going to Brazil or South Africa. The students would choose at least 1 of these international residency weeks and then choose another 2 electives to make up their 12 thought modules. The lead module or professional development module, which I mentioned earlier, has been updated and altered this year in particular. Students are given a choice of a huge range of sessions or workshops on particular areas of leadership and management that they may feel that they need to upskill into. Areas like project management or design thinking have been introduced this year, and they're in addition to some of the soft skills development that is required to undertake the projects themselves. So here you see a sample leadership workshops timeline whereby a student or a team of students can choose from their range of lead modules that they may wish to undertake. And this, as I said, would supplement particular sessions that would be a requirement for undertaking the projects themselves. It may begin in the team building week. So the very first week on the MBA program is a week off-site where the MBA classes, both full-time and the executive MBA, will travel to the west coast of Ireland, undertake team building sessions, obviously get to know each other on a first name basis, and it's from this team building week that the groups will be formed for the projects themselves. We have different project sessions. So company project workshop 1 would entail a launch. Second one would take the project scoping. And the third one then would be getting the job done. Type one there obviously is to map out your project brief. And then various workshops can be undertaken at the student's own discretion throughout the full year of the 1-year program or over the 2-year period of the part-time program. It's at this point I might pass over to my colleague Mark Heaney. Mark oversees the MBA Career Service here in Trinity Business School. So Mark, you might just talk us through some of the career aspects of MBA.
Sure, thanks very much, Eoghan. So, good evening, everybody. As I mentioned, my name is Mark, and I'm part of the Career Development and Alumni team. There's myself and my colleague Denise, who both look after the MBAs. So, as I mentioned, LEAD is the professional development, so it intertwines with some career workshops. So, for example, a new feature that we brought in this year is that we have mandatory personalised career meetings with our students, both full-time and the executive, and that happen between kind of September and December time. So it's really kind of to try and map out what students are looking to do. And obviously from the majority of the students in the full time, they're all looking for a role post MBA, which will be kind of August and September time 2020. So it's a good way for us to meet and see what their career plan is, and then I suppose see how we can kind of help them along the way. And there's different types of workshops that we do. So for example, we have a HR professional panel. And this is basically is MBA alumni who work in both recruitment and HR industry based in Ireland, and we get them to kind of give their inputs of how people can use their MBA to maybe make a career change, what the recruitment process looks like for different companies, how to approach companies, and how to interview. So it gives you a bit of an insight on how to kind of sell your MBA, because a lot of people obviously use their MBA experience when going forward for roles and interviews. So it's how to best sell that. We also do the likes of, say, interviewing workshops where we get a consulting company to come in and they'll go through the, I suppose, step-by-step on how to best interview and how to best sell yourself. As well, we've kind of got salary benchmarking. So a lot of people, as Eoghan mentioned, would move over to Ireland for the role. So it's making sure that you're kind of benchmarking your salary against what you might have previously got in a different country to what the salaries might be in Ireland. And then also as well, we have another company comes in and talks a little bit about kind of career readiness in a changing world. That's normally in January time, and they kind of talk about how, I suppose, there's no longer, people don't work in one particular job for the whole of their career. They'll move into different industries. So it's kind of being ready for what the market might change in the next couple of years, and I suppose how to be ready for that as well. And then I suppose careers and positive psychology is another element that we have. It's how to be positive and how your career can impact and how your day-to-day role might have an impact on companies. So just in relation to as I mentioned, as myself and my colleague Denise, there's a team of 8 of us. We do have also 3 careers advisors who look after the master's cohorts. So we have another 11 master's MSc programs in the likes of, say, finance, international management, marketing and digital marketing. So that would be my colleagues Patrick, Christina and Kate. And then we also have an alumni corporate relations manager who would be Connor. So Connor would look after the corporate relations throughout the business school with different companies that we'd be involved with. But from an MBA point of view, it's myself and Denise, and how myself and Denise, we would split it down by industries. So for example, we have 40 people in the full-time this year, and I have 20 students and Denise has 20 students, and it's based on the particular sectors that people are interested in working in. And we would gain that from, prior to starting the MBA, we ask everybody to give us, fill out a quick questionnaire to find out what type of companies, what type of roles that they're interested in working in. So it gives us as much information before we meet people in the first career meeting at the start of the year. So it's the more information we have at the start of the year, the easier it is for us to then kind of help people along the way through their career journey. Just a little bit of information, just to, I suppose, to touch on. We will gather information on a yearly basis. Next February or March, we'll be gathering for our 2018-2019 class. But just to give you a little bit of an insight into the type of roles that people have got over the last year, over 5 years, what industries, what job functions, and then a little bit of information about companies as well that would have hired students from our MBA. So looking back from kind of or 2017, 2018, how MBAs got the roles. So as you can see, nearly 50% got it through both either referrals or using LinkedIn. Obviously, recruitment companies would also take up a big bulk as well. We've had people who've started their own business as well. I suppose from the outset, referrals can be quite big. So if you're looking to make a move, and most people are looking to move into, say, a mid to senior level role post MBA, referrals can be a really good avenue to get into a company. So if you see a role that you're interested in and you know somebody within that company, a referral can make it a whole lot easier to maybe get that extra step to getting onto the interview process. I suppose from our point of view, our role is as career coaches, so we're not a placement service, so we aren't involved in placing people in roles post MBA, but we're here as career coaches, so whether it be pointing you the direction of what companies might be out there, particularly hiring, giving you prep for interviews, giving you coaching. So that's kind of how it would work. So you can see the more people that use the likes of LinkedIn, referrals, it takes up a big portion of how people find roles. And as we mentioned about lead and the lead module, we also had, say, LinkedIn come in twice to our students this year already to show people how to properly use LinkedIn within the market within Ireland, what are the pitfalls maybe that people have when using LinkedIn, and how it's such a big tool to finding roles and making sure that you have your best profile. So LinkedIn and referrals takes up a huge amount for how students have found jobs over the not last year but the previous year. Just in relation to non-EEA students, so any students that are outside the European economic side, and so we get a lot of students, about 70% of students who are outside of Europe. So once again, as you can kind of see, so referrals, LinkedIn, and maybe previous employers, there's a huge chunk of where people get their roles, as I said, using LinkedIn. So it ties back into making sure that your LinkedIn is, I suppose, as best as possible. And that's where we come in as from the career side, and then also the referrals is such a large amount that the pattern over 1 year and the pattern over 5 years kind of correlates quite closely. And then in the functions, as we can see what type of functions people go into, so consulting, general management, obviously with people doing an MBA, IT, marketing, and within Dublin, we have obviously the tech industry, and there's a huge amount of companies that are based very close to the business school, probably within a kilometre and a half. There's huge amounts of companies that are based here. So you can kind of see from the consulting side, as Owen had mentioned earlier on, there's the 3 projects that you do during the year. And we do see our students moving into maybe consulting with the likes of, say, Deloitte or PwC or Grant Thornton, and because they've gained that experience that is quite transferable to moving into those type of companies. So consulting, management, IT and marketing would be the larger type of functions that people would move into. And then, as I mentioned, the types of companies you see, the Deloittes, the KPMGs, the EYs, and this would be our postgraduates on a whole over the past 5 years. So this would include our master's students as well as our MBA students. And for example, with Deloitte, we would have a lot of our master's students who would go into the graduate programs, but we will have, as I said, the likes of PwC, State Street, Grant Thornton, Google. We normally get each year from our students that finish. Very rarely would you get a company that would hire 2 people. It's normally if we have 40 people in a class, we probably have 40 different employers. It's just because of the background of experience and skills that people have. Everyone within the cohort will have a different role that they might be looking for, or a different type of company that they're interested in. So we do have lots of different companies that people move to. So it just gives you kind of a broad background of it. And then just a little bit of information just in relation to salary increase. So from 2017 to 2018 full-time cohort, so there's a 48% salary increase from what they would have, what their salary would have been in their role prior MBA, which would have been September 2017, to then post MBA, which would have been 3 months after they would have graduated, when we would have surveyed them, which would have been March 2019, and that's based on 60% of the cohort. So we had, I think we had 48 in that cohort. I think it was 28 of people that would have responded to the survey. So it just gives you an understanding of what the salaries, how the average salary beforehand and the average salary after the MBA, but also the majority of times most people are doing their MBA in relation to their career. So it just gives you a bit of a snapshot. And then I suppose a lot of these are covered already. Some other ones that we do is kind of like effective CVs and cover letters. We do exploring career options, and we also do successfully working for international students. As I mentioned earlier on, we do get a sometimes up to say 70% of students which would be outside of Ireland. So we do a panel discussion from students who've moved over to Ireland previously, done their MBA, and are now working in Ireland and post MBA. So how they've got the roles, was there any difficulties that they had when they were trying to find the role, what are the differences between working in the country they previously worked in to working in Ireland, just to kind of give as much insights as possible, so that when students are looking to move to a role post MBA, they have as much kind of knowledge of the recruitment industry and the background within Ireland. Some employer destinations, as I mentioned, over the last couple of years, the likes of Deloitte, EY, Google, Accenture, Paddy Power, HubSpot, PwC, Davy. So there's just some companies that we've had people hired into, and then in a few months' time we'll have more information about the students from last year's class then as well. And as I mentioned as well, companies that are based in Dublin. So there's a lot of large tech companies that their headquarters and MIA headquarters will be based in Dublin. So the likes of, say, Twitter, Airbnb, Zalando, we've got Citi, JP Morgan, Stripe, Intercom, Intel, MongoDB, Amazon. So there's a huge amount of companies that are, this is just a small amount of them, but if you do look, you can see that there's so many companies, and a lot of companies are gradually getting bigger and bigger. I was out in Google there last week, and they're constantly growing. I think they have about 3 or 4 buildings, and they're hopefully going to have, I think it's 6 buildings. Facebook, for example, have taken over a previous bank site in Dublin, and they're building a large part of their large EMEA headquarters in Dublin. So there's a lot of the large companies that are based here, and so it's good to kind of see. So this is where we see the roles that people could be potentially be interested in, and also the companies that they're interested in. And then just finally, I suppose one of the things that people a lot of times ask us is about where do our alumni go. So we, as I mentioned, we survey them on a yearly basis to find out what roles that they've gone into. But from your own point of view, if you're interested in finding out, you can go onto the Trinity College Dublin LinkedIn page. And if you go into the alumni section, you can actually have a look and see what companies that people have gone to. And specifically, you can filter through the MBA and see what companies people have worked in previously, or what roles that they have moved into, or what companies. So it gives you a broad background, both the MBA and also the different types of companies that people are working in, and even the types of roles then as well. So it shows you the kind of background, because as I said, the MBA goes back to, I think it's 1964. 1964, I was going to say 63, 1964. So there's a huge amount of students who've undertaken the MBA. So there's a lot of people in lots of different companies. So it's a good way to give an understanding of what type of company you might be interested in working in the future. So it gives you that background. I'll pass you back to you, Eoghan.
Okay, thank you, Mark. So just maybe coming back to the MBA itself, then, as we mentioned earlier, I suppose one of the key, I suppose, factors from deciding upon undertaking an MBA program would be what type of return on investment you would be able to get from undertaking the MBA. One aspect of that, obviously, is your career trajectory post graduation. The other, obviously, is to reduce the overall cost. It's a huge investment for anybody to be making to travel, here to Dublin and to undertake a program on a full-time basis. The fees for the Trinity MBA program are €34,700, which is a very large investment to be making, albeit very competitively priced in comparison maybe to some top MBAs across Europe and certainly in the US. So one of the first and easiest means, I suppose, of reducing the cost of your MBA is obviously to apply for scholarship. We recommend applying for the scholarship in line with submitting an online application. And we have a large range of scholarships that would be awarded to candidates from varying different backgrounds and different levels of experience. The most broad-ranging scholarship being the merit scholarships. So these are a series of scholarships that are really decided upon based on the skills and the experience and the qualifications that a candidate would have with him or her that would be bringing with them onto the program, and that would be adding value from a peer learning perspective. Those that have strong experience that we're quite interested in having on the program, if they can supplement that with a strong GMAT score, somewhere between 650 and higher, and then they'll also be awarded by way of scholarship. We've arranged scholarships for entrepreneurs, individuals coming onto the program that have been running and managing their own businesses. This is obviously a skill set that's very highly regarded, and we welcome onto the MBA program. So we have a suite of scholarships for entrepreneurs. We partner with the 30% Club, which is an international organisation that is aiming to get 30% female representation on boardrooms globally. So we have 2 half scholarships available to very strong female candidates that will be applying for our MBA. Social impact scholarships for candidates that are coming from the NGO sector. We have the Social Enterprise Project as part of our MBA program. The corporate social responsibility, business ethics and sustainability will be recurring themes right throughout the various modules, as well as the projects themselves. So candidates coming from the NGO or not-for-profit sector would also be awarded scholarships. We have TCD alumni bursaries for those that will be past graduates of the university, and we've also partnered with ACCA, the accountancy body here in Ireland, and that would extend globally. So anyone coming onto the program with an ACCA qualification, certainly an FCCA qualification, that would be an individual that would have attained their accountancy qualification 5 years or more, they would be awarded a GMAT waiver and also a 15% bursary. Scholarship values vary, but it's usually between 15 to 50% of the fees. The highest awards we offer are 50% scholarships. We don't offer full scholarships. We try to minimise the cost, I suppose, for the majority of students coming onto our program from overseas. So we highly recommend, obviously, putting your name forward for these scholarships. Looking at the entry requirements for the program itself, then, we look for candidates, as I said, from as a diverse range of sectors and industries as we possibly can. A degree, a professional qualification, or even a track record of business achievement are all welcome. The application is undertaken online. We recommend, obviously, completing all sections, but in particular taking some time and some care over 3 essay questions that we ask on the online application. And these are quite short essays, 300 to 400 words maximum. Take your time on these, because the admissions committee and MBA directors will be looking quite closely at the answers provided on those. A minimum of 3 to 5 years of professional experience is required. However, the average is maybe slightly above that, 6, 7, or even 8 years of professional experience, usually on the full-time MBA program. We also request 2 professional references. You will supply your referee's contact details on the online application, and once you submit the online application, those referees are then emailed with a reference template which they complete and send directly back to ourselves. We stipulate for 2 professional references as opposed to academic references. This is a post-experience business management program. So we're most interested, obviously, in references from your professional experience. CV or resume, obviously, is extremely important. And GMAT or GRE tests are looked at quite closely. We have a minimum GMAT requirement of 550, but just to let you know, the current average GMAT on our full-time MBA program is just over 640 points. So to give yourself, I suppose, the maximum chance of receiving an offer and scholarship, then I would recommend, obviously, aiming for somewhere in the region of 640 to 650 points in GMAT. Anybody applying to our program that has extensive managerial experience, we would recommend applying without GMAT originally, and following the interview process, which would take place after you submit your application. A decision will then be made by the MBA directors on whether GMAT is required. So anyone with about maybe 8 years of management experience would usually receive a GMAT waiver. So I think that's all we got, guys. I might pass this back over to Raj if he wants to open up for Q&A and we'll be more than happy, obviously, to take your questions. I'll be reaching out to you all by way of email over the coming couple of days. If you're interested in learning more, we obviously recommend maybe popping me an email. No.
Perfect. Thank you very much for your presentation. It was quite interesting, and we already have some questions, but I would encourage everyone to type in their questions in the chat box that appears if you're using the mobile version of the GoToWebinar platform. There is a question mark that you should tap on, and it appears so that you can type in your questions about the Trinity MBA. It would be a very it would be good to also have your preferences on how to okay, it would also help if you can put your preferences on questions if you're using the desktop version. Okay, so we have the first question by Eughan. Do you offer masters in purchasing and supplies? This is probably more for the master's programs of Trinity.
That's okay.
Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about those.
About 11 master's programs. So supply chain management will be the closest to it.
Yeah, there's a supply chain management master's that just started this September, just gone, and was the first year of it. I think it's called supply chain and logistics. If you go onto the Trinity College website, or sorry, College Trinity Business School, you'll see the list of the masters. There is 11 different masters, but that would be the one, yeah, the supply chain and logistics.
Okay, perfect. We have a question by Dama Munjay. Out of the 69% of the international students, what is the percentage of students from Africa?
Oh, good question. I'd actually have to check our alumni database. It'd be quite small now. It'd be anywhere between maybe 2 to 3%, and we're certainly under the 10% mark over the last 5 years or so, which is when I've been here. Off the top of my head, I don't know, but quite a small percentage now, to be honest. Somewhere between 2 to 3%, I'd imagine.
Okay, and there is another question from Hajar on admissions. What is more important for admission, GMAT, CV, or essays?
Can you repeat that question, Garaj? Sorry.
What is more important for admission, GMAT, CV, or essays?
Oh, the CV, most definitely. So, really, the best advice I could give would be maybe putting yourself in the position of our MBA director or our MBA directors in our admissions committee, in that we're looking to put a class of 50 together, and we want candidates with strong experience that would be, in a position to add value to the classroom dynamic and to be able to debate with the lecturers. So experience is the number one criteria we look out for when recruiting. So CV is obviously the first point of contact that we request from candidates, either their LinkedIn profile or their written resume. And from there we can gauge obviously not only their eligibility for the program, but also their potential maybe for a scholarship.
Perfect. There is a question here by Isa who's asking us, can I use recommendations from my LinkedIn profile? Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about the recommendations and how they should be shaped up for Trinity.
No would be the short answer, to be perfectly honest, in that the reference template that we send to the referees of the candidates is quite specific. We ask a range of questions. It's quite short, it's not too intrusive for the referees, but we do request certain types of information from the referees themselves, and this gives us an insight into the personal accomplishments and achievements and motivations behind the candidate's candidature for the MBA program. So we would highly recommend that the candidate would include the referee's contact details, and we would send them out that template. If the candidate already has a written reference, maybe a one-page reference document from an employer, and they don't want to be reaching out to that employer for another reference, and that's perfectly fine. We can accept a written reference instead. But we haven't to date accepted short references from LinkedIn. No.
Okay, another question on the GMAT. My major concern is around the GMAT. I have 11 years of experience working in various roles in a bank and consulting with a transformation team. Can I get assurances of a GMAT waiver? And can I share my CV with you after the webinar? This is a question by Eoghan.
So yes, we would actually recommend applying for the program without GMAT initially in your case. The reason being is that you have, obviously strong experience in 11 years, but the GMAT waiver is purely made at the discretion of the MBA director post-interview. So while we would recommend applying for the program without GMAT originally, it may be the case that the MBA director deems your level of managerial experience over that 11-year period to either be sufficient to grant a GMAT waiver or maybe insufficient, and you may be asked to undertake a GMAT. So we would recommend applying for the program without GMAT, and it would be following an interview that a decision would be made not only on your offer but also on your GMAT requirement.
Perfect. Okay, and we have a number of questions regarding scholarships. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about what kind of scholarships are available at Trinity College. Would it be partial or upon entry for merit, or any other funding possibilities that you can offer that Trinity recommends?
Yes, so the scholarships are pretty broad ranging, and if there's scholarships listed on our website that you feel that you're not eligible for, then the Trinity MBA Merit Scholarship will cover all. And that's really a scholarship awarded to candidates that would have very strong experience and that would be very interested in having on our program. As I mentioned, I suppose the scholarship values would vary, but they usually range between 15 to 50% of the fees. And the maximum amount of scholarship that we award is 50%. So we do not offer full scholarships, just to be clear on that. We have a limited number of 50% scholarships available for those outstanding candidates. But the average might be somewhere between 25 to 30% of the fees, which is quite a significant saving. The fees can be paid in 2 installments, so half could be due in August before the program starts in September, and the other half of the fees will be due in January of the following year. So the fees can be split. If a candidate is successful with a scholarship, then that scholarship award will be deducted from their first payment. So that may alleviate some of the financial pressures that a candidate may be experiencing or may be worried about prior to coming onto the program.
Great, thank you. We have a question here that is again connected to financing, and then maybe we can go a little bit more in the direction of the other costs entailed in the Trinity MBA, such as accommodation, and maybe we can go a little bit more in the direction of what it is like to be in Dublin and study in Dublin. So the question here is, what are the additional costs for studying in the Trinity MBA, aside from the obviously the tuition costs, and what are the accommodation fees and the other costs around studying there?
Okay, so that's a very good question. So we highly recommend, obviously, that all candidates would devise a financial plan or a financial budget. If they do get awarded an offer to come here to study an MBA in Trinity Business School, so your fees, as you rightly point out, are only one portion of your overall costs. In addition to that, you obviously have your living costs plus your rental or your accommodation costs. Starting with accommodation can be quite expensive here in Dublin. So the high-end student accommodation, these are purpose-built student accommodations that would be newly built. They would be somewhere in the region of €250 a week, so it's about €1,000 a month. and that's for the more expensive option, obviously. Most of the students would secure accommodation in groups, so they might rent an apartment or share a house, and that would drive down the cost significantly. So if somebody was renting a room, for example, and the cost in a house, I should say, that might vary anywhere between maybe 600 to 800 euros per month. It obviously depends on what part of the city that you're living in. We're quite fortunate in that the campus here in Trinity College Dublin is located in the city centre, over 47 acres. So all public transport links would come here towards the city centre. So it'd be very easy to commute in and out to college. So to alleviate or to reduce the rental cost, we would obviously recommend maybe living a number of kilometres outside of the city centre and commuting or using public transport to come here to undertake your classes. In addition to that, then you would have your living costs. And as a rough rule of thumb, we've been advising students it's usually between maybe 500 to 600 euros per month as living costs. That's obviously a subjective number, depends on your standard of living, but we think you would be able to live relatively comfortably on that amount. So we can work with candidates and advise them maybe a bit better and in a bit more detail on the overall costs of studying here in Dublin, if and when they get an offer of a place in the programme. But it's extremely important, obviously, to not only think about, but to map out and to budget, not only for your fees, but obviously for your rental and living costs also. It's a good question. Another thing to add, actually, I should point out, we'd obviously recommend that students not just budget for the 12 months of the programme. It's very important that students would budget maybe for 14, 15, or even 16 months. And the reason behind this is that after they would graduate from the programme, we want students to be in a position to be able to look for careers and for work without having to be under huge financial pressure with regards to affording to stay here in Ireland. So we highly recommend that you would, when making out your budget, that you would budget for more than the 12 months of the programme. As I said, 14, 15, or even 16 months.
Thank you. As everywhere, it is also a matter of what kind of standard of living you are used to, of course, with the costs. But in any case, there's at least some kind of a minimum that people would have to expect to invest in that kind of education. Let's go on to living and working in Ireland. Rodrigo is asking us, can I work in Ireland while I study? Which is quite a reasonable question, and I would expand it to also the opportunities of staying there after graduation. Or if you can tell us a little bit more about how many months or how many years can people stay there after graduation in order to find employment.
Yeah, so as I mentioned in one of the slides, we were talking about the non-EEA students. So anybody who's is from the European Union, they're entitled to stay in Ireland, so that there's no problem with that. And anybody who's outside of the non-EEA, so say for example, people are coming from the States, or coming from China, India, or Australia, or New Zealand, or anywhere like that. How it works is, what happens is, once you have finished your MBA and you get your results transcript, which is normally the first week of September, you're entitled to a work permit, which is called a Stamp 1G, and this entitles you to work for up to 2 years and post MBA. So, for example, our students who just graduated in November this year, and a lot of them would have got their Stamp 1G at the end of September, so they're entitled to work in Ireland up until September 2021. And what this means is that you initially get a year on your Stamp 1G, and then you can work for any company, and there's no you're not required to get an additional work permit or get sponsored by the company. And then once you're still working, then you're entitled to get an additional year on, so it would be 2 years altogether. So you don't get 2 years straight away, you get the year, and then you go and renew it for a following year. And that entitles you to work for 40 hours per week. Now, in relation to working part-time, when you come over on your, I think it's only the Stamp 2 visa that you would come over, it would entitle you to work for a maximum of 20 hours per week. But as Owen mentioned earlier on, the course is obviously Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, and there will be obviously a lot of it. There will be additional reading involved. So, very rarely do we have students who would have the time to work an additional work a role while at the same time studying full time for their MBA. But the main point, I suppose, is you're entitled to a stamp 1G, and once you pass your once you've got your exam results, which is normally the first or second week of September, and we do get a lot of students post MBA who look to remain in Ireland, and I think from last year's class it would have been roughly about 70% or so, and that kind of then ties in again with what Owen mentioned about kind of budgeting for say 16 months or so, because a lot of students obviously finish in the first couple of weeks in August, and then look to obviously start a role from September onwards. But if you're looking for a mid to senior level role, it might take a little bit of time, so obviously you could be looking up until December for a role, could be even a little bit longer. So it's definitely worthwhile. And when we talk about careers from our point of view, is the earlier you start to look for a role and from careers and from a March, April time, the quicker you would hopefully then be in a role. So we do get a large amount of students, and roughly about 70% who would like to remain in Ireland post MBA, and the stamp 1G entitles them to do that for 2 years.
Perfect. Now let's go to a question that is more regarding accommodation and how students live and where students live and during the MBA, the Trinity MBA program. Eugene is asking us if you support people in finding accommodation, and how is accommodation organized for the Trinity MBA? Is it hotels, or do you have any dedicated places for that, or do you recommend to the students some places where they can stay?
Yes, there's a number of means of sourcing accommodation, the responsibility of which is on the side of the students. But we would have a university-wide accommodations department that would be highly recommended as the first place to start. So they would cover off both private rental accommodation and also student accommodation. So these would be purpose-built student accommodation, some of which would be assigned to undergraduate students and others assigned to postgraduate MBAs and PhD students. Most would be off campus, but usually within a 10 to 15-minute walk from the city centre campus here. Some of the newer student accommodation, as I mentioned earlier, is quite expensive. 250 euros a week was what I was hearing to be quoted. What most of our MBA students do, however, is prior to the program starting, we get the students to join a Slack group. So a group that they will be able to communicate to each other with prior to the program starting. So they would share various accommodation links, properties, apartments, houses that they would have discovered, and obviously asking each other if there's other members of the class or of the cohort that would be interested in joining them and in sharing when they're renting these accommodations. And that's worked quite well. We'd also have the outgoing students that might have accommodation freeing up within the places that they were living throughout their MBA student experience. And then obviously yourselves and the admissions team, we do give some advice, obviously, to students regards to locations here in Dublin, where to live, and how easily accessible those locations would be with regards to getting into the university here to undertake their MBA classes. So yes, we would give limited advice and accommodation from ourselves and the admissions team. Most of the student accommodations advice will be handled by the university's accommodation department. And also the Students' Union Accommodation Department, which I forgot to mention. The Students' Union Accommodation Department here in Trinity is quite good, and we highly recommend, obviously, that the students, incoming students, would reach out to them also. We provide a welcome pack to all those that enroll on the MBA program, and that would have extensive detail on sourcing accommodation here in Dublin, and that will be issued to the students months in advance of them coming here, so they will be given ample time. You know, Mark mentioned kind of timing there just previously, that would apply to accommodation also. So those that have applied early to our program, have been accepted, have been given a scholarship, then they are obviously giving themselves plenty of time to source reasonably priced student accommodation, reasonably priced private accommodation, and that's very important. Those that leave it to, to very close to the start dates, those looking for accommodation throughout June, July, August, with a program starting in September, may find it difficult. So again, look, timing is key, and those that apply early certainly make it a bit easier on themselves with regards to sourcing accommodations and getting prepared for the program starting in September.
Great. I think that we are ready now to go to some questions regarding the program of the Trinity MBA. Hajar is asking us, how do companies in Ireland include in the program?
How did they participate in the program, Durag?
Yes, probably that's what he means.
Oh yes, yeah, no problem. So there's a couple of different means. One would be whereby our own members of faculty and members of staff here would have a lot of contacts in various different industries and different companies throughout Ireland, and here in Dublin in particular. Dublin's quite a small place, and we've some huge numbers of multinationals that will have their European headquarters here. And given the fantastic location that we have here in Trinity College as a university, we're very, very lucky to be positioned extremely close to a lot of these multinational corporations. So there will be long-standing relationships that the university or that the business school will have over a number of years, that we will be able to reach out to these companies and ask them to participate in the MBA program. University itself will have an extremely strong reputation, both domestically and globally, so getting those companies to participate isn't too difficult, to be honest. And then on the other side, we would have companies that would approach us and that would be quite interested in learning from an MBA team and maybe getting some suggestions from an MBA team. And for that reason, they would obviously want to be involved in the program itself. It's effectively a win-win for both parties. The MBA team gets to undertake a live project with these organizations, and then obviously the companies themselves basically get free advice from the MBA team. So it's a strategy that's worked extremely well for us over the maybe 6 or 7 years that we've been delivering this type of MBA model. We also get referrals, I suppose. So good news will travel fast, and when the MBA teams perform quite strongly, then other organisations will be keen to get involved also. So it's a really good question. But we're also, I suppose, always on the lookout for companies. And always interested maybe in speaking to different types of companies from different types of sectors and industries, again for the purpose of maximising diversity and inclusion of the programme.
Great. We also have a question here about blockchain. Do you have a program that is focusing on blockchain technology?
So we introduced a module this year, Technology Today, and it's not specifically on blockchain. It covers AI and fintech and a number of other, I suppose, disruptive technologies that would be in existence at the moment. But the member of faculty that is running and organising this module, Laurie Keogh, is the Managing Director of Consensus, which would be the largest blockchain company here in Ireland and one of the major players globally. So the program or the module itself will be extremely practical and applied in nature. And as I said, giving the students an opportunity to make contact with the Managing Director of Consensus as the module designer and the module deliverer is obviously a huge advantage for students.
Great. There is also a question about the admissions process. How much time does the admission process take? How much time do I need in order to prepare everything needed for the application? Papers, exams, a question by Ali.
Okay, so it's a good question. So the online application is relatively straightforward. You can complete it maybe over a day or two, certainly over a weekend. But it's about getting maybe your documentation prepared prior to that. So you'd look, as I said, for an updated CV. You might wish to amend the CV and showcase any managerial experience, any experience you have where you took the lead on a particular project or showed innovation within your professional experience, and put that to the fore of the CV is what I'd recommend. We would ask for your transcript or your certificate from your undergraduate or postgraduate qualifications. And we'd also require an IELTS for those that might be coming here onto the program where English is not their native language. Now this depends. If you've been educated through English, or if you've been working extensively in an English-speaking environment, then your English test may not be required. If you're unsure, we would recommend applying for the program without the test initially, and we can obviously advise you on whether you are required to undertake the test itself. Similarly to the GMAT, if you've extensive level of work experience, over 10 years maybe of professional work experience, the best advice I could give would be to apply for the program maybe without GMAT initially, and a decision would be made on whether the test is required after you're interviewed by the MBA director. Once you submit the application, we try to schedule interviews quite quickly, usually within a couple of weeks, and post interview you'll get an answer usually within 5 working days. So we try and turn around the applications quite quickly, so candidates aren't waiting long to know whether they've got an offer or not.
Okay, another question on admissions just popped in. This is from Topal. Topal is asking us, what is the minimum IELTS score for admission?
So we're looking at IELTS up until this year was 6.5 or greater, but there's talks now that could be increased to 7.0. So this is obviously for the students' own benefit. It's one thing to have a certain level of English, but it's a different thing maybe to have English that is at a level where somebody can understand and contribute in the classroom environment on an MBA program specifically. So to the best of my knowledge, I would be confirming 6.5, but to be honest, I would be aiming for 7.0. So IELTS 7.0 would be what's recommended.
Okay. Another question on careers after graduation. Salma is asking us if you have a career placement program.
So from the career placement program, as we're not a placement service, so we do obviously a suite of career aspects throughout the year, whether it be the likes of say like LinkedIn, CV workshops, and coaching throughout the year. But we don't actually go out to the market and source roles for people, and we don't kind of go and get a role for people because we just don't have the capacity. It's never been a placement service, but we would try and coach people and give them as much advice as possible in relation to the Irish landscape. So that's why we have panels of recruitment HR coming in. We have a panel of people who've done the MBA before who are international students. And if there's particular alumni in a company and that we could put somebody in contact with, we would do it that way. But it's not it wouldn't be a placement service. The onus is solely based on the student to try and find a role themselves. We'll try and facilitate and help along the way, but we're not in a capacity to offer a placement after post MBA.
Okay. And if we don't have any more questions, I would ask the attendees to ask their final questions. I will read out one last question. So please type in your final questions while I'm asking this question last but least. Last but one. So I wanted to ask you if you can tell us a little bit more about the student experience there and the networking opportunities that the Trinity College MBA offers. How does that happen? Are there any extracurricular activities that are organized by the school for networking and for enriching the networks, basically, of the students?
Yeah, so the best advice would be to get involved as quickly and as early as possible and to embrace what is on offer here at the university level. So The orientation week for Trinity College Dublin would take place about 2 weeks before the students would start their classes. And this would be where the clubs and societies of the university will be showcasing what they have to offer. And as an ancient university, we have a huge range of clubs and societies from all different kind of sports and hobbies and all different types of interests. So getting involved, at the clubs and SOCs level or clubs and societies level as early and as quickly as possible, and the program is highly recommended. And then externally from that, and maybe a bit more specifically to the MBA, we would have various alumni events that will be taking place here throughout the year, not just here in Dublin, but in different cities across the world. So what we'd recommend doing is getting involved in those also. So the networking events might not just be from the Trinity Business School, they could be from the wider Trinity College alumni network. For example, I was at one recently in New York, and we had about 160, 170 alumni that came through the university here over the last 20 or 30 years. It's an extremely strong network based obviously very far afield, and a lot of business and contacts were made throughout the evening. So, being involved with the university and being involved as an alum of the program and attending these events while you're a student, I think is extremely important.